This is Goku's son, DBZ, and welcome back for a new top 5 list. This time around, we're looking at my top 5 favorite horror games for the Nintendo Gamecube. Now, with that said, keep in mind these are not going to be exclusively survival horror games. It also includes games with elements of horror combined. For instance, with the PS1, Nightmare Creatures is a hack and slash with combined with also horror elements. Same for other things. First person shooter with horror elements. The first of these is also a shooter with elements of horror or horror elements to it. With that said, no honorable mentions this time. Coming in first at number 5 is Guist. Geist is a interesting shooter game with elements of horror as you can possess people as a spirit. Personally, I think it is a very unique shooter compared to many other games, definitely of the 6th generation. It's very distinctive. I actually kind of like also the cover art. Personally, I think is cool. But yeah, it's definitely a unique game. I have not seen any others like it. It would only be the second ever M-rated game that would be published by Nintendo themselves, which is also quite interesting. Now, personally, I am a very big fan of Geist. I think that the game does not get near enough credit, which is weird because it's a very fun game. Once again, to it though, I'll be honest, it is probably an acquired taste game, like many games out there. Coming in at number 4, however, is infamous for being one of the absolute hardest games in difficulty of the entire franchise. Now, personally, I have a fondness for this game as well. Maybe a bit of a hot take, but I like it more than several games in the franchise. For me, at number 4 is Resident Evil Zero. Resident Evil Zero, of course, being a prequel to the original Resident Evil. Personally, I am a big fan of this game, and I love getting to see a classic character from RE1 return. With new gameplay and the fact you could switch back and forth between the two characters, it allowed for some interesting puzzle, platforming sort of elements in the game. But yeah, the difficulty curve is pretty high. Graphically, I actually think it still looks really good. Presentation is solid. It's one of probably the best looking games, in my opinion, on the GameCube, at least if you're going for more realism in any case. Personally, I do have a soft spot though for RE0. Number 3, I'm sure a lot of people probably have higher up than me, but for me at 3 is Resident Evil 4. Now, Resident Evil 4 is definitely a very special game. The very first time I would actually ever play the game would be on GameCube, though years ago, along in a move and stuff, sadly I lost my original GameCube and everything. Though years later I would finally get a hold of another one, which I'm glad I did, as I was able to finally play RE4 again on the GameCube, though I've only done like a playthrough twice on the GameCube, as I beat RE4 a lot more on the PS2. But with that said, still, I actually like it and the way it plays with the GameCube controller. Personally, I like overall just to feel enjoyment. And for me, I just feel the game actually looks maybe just a tad better on the GameCube over other ports. But to each their own. Coming in at number 2 is Resident Evil Remake. Resident Evil Remake is how you do a Resident Evil game right. Also, I'm glad that this also even includes the demo to another game. But yeah, it is cool. But the fact that it was a 2-disc game for the GameCube, to be fair, It is a pretty decent sized game because the graphics and audio files and everything, so they kind of had to do a double disc. Now, for me, this is also a little bit higher in difficulty, but I actually like specific new elements they would add in the remake. Specifically, Crimson Heads was a very unique and cool idea. In my opinion, it would become a pain in the, excuse my language, but it would become a pain in the ass to deal with them, nevertheless. But with that said, RE Remake definitely holds a very heavy nostalgia factor for me personally. This is how you do a remake correct and solid, and adding new elements to make the story even a bit more interesting. Coming in at number one, has no rival. For me, my favorite horror game by a landslide for the GameCube is and will always be Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem, and probably always will be my favorite, as it has a lot of influence and inspiration from H.P. Lovecraft's like whole mythos with different ancient gods like Cthulhu and many others. As there's a lot more to it than just Cthulhu. And sorry about the yawn. I'm currently recording at about 6:30 in the morning, so it's still a little early. But with that said, yeah, overall, very good game, solid. I highly recommend more people give Eternal Darkness Sunny's Requiem a shot. It is unfortunate it remains to this day, like Geist, exclusively on the GameCube. Weirdly enough, it's never gotten a re-release digitally or physical, which kind of sucks. Which is one of the reasons this game holds its value, definitely. Obviously, given the price range, Geist does not hold its value because a lot of people just for some reason want to bash on the game, and so it's a lot less popular. But Eternal Darkness holds a very special place in I think many of us game lover or GameCube lover hearts. This is one of arguably the best survival horror games, in my opinion, of all time, and especially the sanity meter messing with you, thinking the volume is going down or the TV turns off or it's changing channels or something. That is what I really love about this game specifically, is how it messes with your freaking head. That is the definition of psychological. And that is why I love this game more than many others. It really would be the first, I would say, major horror game to implement a sanity meter, though we would see many others over the years. They would end up using Five Nights at Freddy's, weirdly enough. But I'd say a better example of a modern series that uses a sanity meter. You have specifically one example, I would say, is the. I'm trying to remember the name now of the franchise. But, anyways, I would say it is definitely a game you should give a shot. But that said, stay safe out there and have a happy Halloween. And we're just like 2 days away now. Hard to believe it. But with that said, next time I will be looking at my top 5 favorite horror games of the PS4. Stay tuned for that, and I'll see y'all next time. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel.